And I welcome all of you here, first of all, to the second season of BW Education Conclave. Now, our topic of discussion is how technology is shaping the future of education. And that's particularly interesting in the current scenario, given that the digital wave is actually being embraced by all sectors in India, and why only India and abroad as well. So therefore, it's going to be interesting to see how actually in this current context, how technology is sweeping through the classrooms as educators. So we have with us very eminent panelists here on stage, and who will help us decode the pros and cons of the role that technology is playing in a traditional sector like education. The word here, traditional, is very, very important. While other sectors, it's easier for them to adopt and embrace technology. So how education, a traditional sector like education, is actually doing it. So I'll take the opportunity to introduce you, Dr. Mrs. S.S. Kulkarni, Director, Rajaram Bapu Institute of Technology. We also have with us Dr. Mohit Dubey, Pro Vice Chancellor, IFTM University. So I'll start with you, Dr. Kulkarni. So even as technology is increasingly being used in classrooms, all of us are of the view that teachers and educators are still very important. So in such a situation, do you think the new technological chances are effective enough to replace the age-old traditional teaching or training methods? According to you, if you can share your perspective.
Your question is very much relevant. I would just like to refer to the discussions which have been going since morning. It has been talked that Industry 4 revolution has already set in. The skill sets required, the graduate attributes like interdisciplinary working, global mobility, ICT, data analytics, algorithms, common sense and logic, all these are the attributes required. So the two things are there, future of education and technology.
Right.
How we can balance this, because age-old tradition is set in, and faculty is something, we don't make them responsible for results. If the results are good, teacher has done well. If they are not good, university question paper was out of course, right? So with this mindset, it's a little bit difficult, but then I will highlight the case study of my own institute, Rajaram Bapu Institute of Technology. It's in Maharashtra. So when we started with this some 10 years ago, the technology change was coming in, and we made sure that Moodle was a platform. It is an open source platform wherein the students, teachers, they can interact with each other. You can conduct quizzes, you can give assignments to students. The students can submit the assignments through Moodle, and the teacher doesn't have to bother that it is submitted on time or not, because the software records the date, time, everything. And then you don't even have to bother whether it is copied, because you can do plagiarism check. So that Turnitin check can also be done, and you will know whether the assignment is copied or not. So there are lots of benefits, but then there was a mindset problem, that whatever we have been doing for so many years is good, why we should change? But the new faculties adopted very fast. And then we did lot of hand-holding, lot of training programs, creating awareness, because when you touch the minds, when you touch the heart, then only the things will change. It's not with stick, because you cannot deal with faculties with stick manner. So punishment doesn't work much, it has to be motivated. So we did a lot of hand-holding, and now I'm very proud to say that almost 90% faculty is using Moodle, and they're enjoying, because there are discussion platforms with the student. You float a question, something I have taught today, I can float a question on my discussion platform, and then the students start asking each other, answering each other, and the students get involved, because we have marks kept aside. If you take part in discussion, you will get these marks, like 5 marks are kept aside. So everything is accounted, and if you value it, as you know, the present generation loves to work on software. So it's working. But it takes a lot of patience, pursuance, and you have to go on follow up with faculties.
Sure. So you mentioned the open source software, which is Moodle.
Yeah.
And, that's a very interesting anecdote, that how the teachers, as in the faculty, and also the students have actually embraced it. But having said that, any other anecdote that you would like to talk about? Because, how prepared do you think are the educators to imbibe the latest technologies in their teaching methods?
Yeah. So since morning, we have talked about MOOCs also, massive open online courses,
Sure.
and the certification programs. So to talk about it is easy. Maybe the students will take it in. But then, of course, there are students who can do a lot of malpractice, make someone else appear for the exam and get the marks and those sort of things.
Right.
So what we did, we made each and every faculty take up one course of their interest. It can be of any area, humanities, technical, science, whatever they wish to. And we have made it compulsory that you go through one course up to the certification level. And the purpose was that the faculty should realize that what is there in that online learning. What are the difficulties encountered? How you have to listen to the webinars, how you have to listen to the recorded lectures, and how you have to answer those questions. And then writing assignments, online assignments, submitting those assignments in the software. So that on-the-job asset training to the faculty really helped. Now they appreciate learning on MOOCs, and they can really guide students, and they can handhold students for MOOCs. So that is also working very well.
Sure.
So we have made MOOCs course now compulsory for students also.
Sure, okay. All right, so Dr. Dubey, I'll come to you. So could you actually outline the road ahead and talk about the advances that could be spelled out for the future?
Thank you. First of all, let me thank you, the Businessworld and the team, for inviting me to this fantastic session on higher education, and more importantly, about the technology and education. Thank God that we graduated right before 2000, and we didn't have to, think about a lot of some of these buzzwords that I'm hearing today: artificial intelligence, the blockchain and the analytics and stuff like that. But I'm extremely happy and very proud that the first decade, and more than a few years then, I spent my career in the IT world. And we did some of the phenomenal work in technology space. I worked with Infosys Technology and in United States for 10 years.
Sure.
With Bank of America. We did a lot of phenomenal projects, Check 21, the compliance projects, some of those, anti-money laundering and KYC and all that. But we never were bogged down about some of these bleeding edge or cutting edge technology words in those words. Now the recent decade that I've been associated with the education system, this is where I found, it's a very, very stark contrast in a sense that, education till date have been a person is a policy. It's not driven by productivity, it's not driven by effectiveness, it's not driven by, the artificial intelligence, so on and so forth. So what I find now is that it's a race of hare and a tortoise, really. Because now people are talking about bleeding edge words in the education space. First, we need to get the education of technology. I mean, we were talking about education of the technology. People need to understand what the technology would be and what would be the future of the technology, right?
Sure.
And now these edutech players have come up on the scene, and then they are talking about, bulldozing with some of these words, which were primarily these old school of thoughts. I mean, people are talking about artificial intelligence. The schools of the older days were talking about the intelligence. It's just that, you need to first develop the intelligence, the artificial element would come up. I mean, it's a classic example. If I talk to one of those, edutech players, I mean, what is artificial intelligence? What's so, core about artificial intelligence?
Sure.
It's nothing. I mean, पहले हम और आप chess खेलते थे, आज machine हमारे साथ chess खेल रही, so that's an artificial intelligence.
Sure.
So if my machine is able to read my mind and predict some of those moves, that's artificial intelligence. Big deal. I mean, we was already trained to play chess. It's just that the machine has come in. People talk about machine learning. We were already evaluating those papers. We were evaluating those, there were teachers who were giving us the question papers and all that. Machine learning is about predicting if I'm able to do a right question, the next question becomes tougher. Sure. So that's machine learning. So see, the challenge is that it's the EQ versus EQ space, IQ space. I mean, the technology is an IQ world. You need to work on day in, day out, to catch up with the race of the world. I mean, that's the IQ part of it. Whereas the education traditionally has been about more on the learning part. How do I evolve the willingness to learn? How do I evolve the learnability quotient in my, my own self?
Sure.
Right? So the difference is, instead of developing or nurturing those EQ elements within that school frame or the, the undergrad program, we are trying to inculcate the IQ element. Let those kids enjoy their life. The school days or the college days are for enjoying. Let them develop their EQs. The IQs, the technology will take care of it because the technology will keep on changing. Right? But if you are able to inculcate 3 basic qualities in a student during their college days, which is basically how do you build the cat. When you talk about the cat, it's not the MBA program. We're talking about the communication, C, is the application of knowledge. I'm a chemical engineer. I never worked for a chemical engineering company. I always worked in the investment banking cycle. I worked in the private banking. I worked in the technology space. But that was the aptitude that was developed and the application of knowledge that was the habit of applying that knowledge. And then there's the T of the cat is the teamwork. The technology is funny thing. I mean, I can talk to you here sitting on a WhatsApp, but if you ask me, can I speak to you for 5 minutes outside, I don't have words. Because I've never been trained to speak to you outside the technology. So I'm saying let that EQ element be developed in the college days, because you will get ample opportunities to develop that EQ, which you will not get here when you are into the corporate world, into the IT world. Let the IT will take care of the entire EQ, the IQ space of it with some of those jazzy words later on.
Sure. But that's a very, very interesting point that you laid emphasis on. So, perhaps the key point that we take out from here is that technology is often considered a distraction also. So while there are the positive elements, there are lots of negatives also to it. So one that you mentioned is the possible disconnect of social interaction. So somewhere do you think that it's disabling the intellectual creativity among students in a way?
I'm not sure if that's a question to be asked in this generation. I mean, my daughter, when she was 2 years old, she used to play on iPad. I mean, do you really need this next generation to teach technology and teach by whom? Who are these teachers? I mean, we were not the generation of WhatsApp, right? So the technology will come to this next generation. The problem is that the EQ element that I was talking about is something that this generation is being kept aloof of that. And, the kids of this, 5, 6, 7, 8 years are now being forced by the parents to go out and play.
Sure.
They are not being forced out to go and, enjoy the sun. Sure. They are being forced to sit in the AC and enjoy the laptop and the iPads and the iPhones of the world. Do you think that next generation would, and I recently heard that, read that story that, the kids, the UK did that story that the next generation kids are not able to hold the pencil properly because they are running their fingers on the iPads, but they're not able to hold the pencils and pen properly.
But that's dangerous, actually.
That's what I'm saying. So if you are looking at the advantages of technology, there are huge disadvantages of technology, and we need to control the technology, how it should be propagated to the next generation, and that's where the whole education system had to play a role.
Sure.
You cannot be the messenger of the technology, from one place to another. I mean, from an IT company, you can't just push it off to the students. You need to be the manager of the technology. People who have spent quite significant of time in the technology space, and now they are, probably serving the education space. They need to act as a manager of the technology, what needs to be propagated and shared with this new generation, right?
Sure.
So technology cannot just run in an autopilot mode. It needs to be controlled by people who understand technology and can probably be controlled in a much fashion which benefits that next generation.
Sure.
Let me come to the other element of it, because the technology players in the education space, they have recently popped up.
Sure.
I mean, we never heard about an edge tech space altogether, really, right? So when I talk to a lot of people, and I'll give you an example. When I was talking to one of the heads of the ERP, world's largest ERP, and I'm not going to name the vendor itself. But then this fellow was the head, and he came to me, sir, we are a world's largest ERP service provider, and we do this, that, and all that stuff. I was like, all right, so what's the cost? He said, phenomenal cost, right? It's almost like 1 crore, because they are the world's largest ERP. I was like, well, I come from a hardcore technology background. For me, the best tool to do a project management till 2007-8 was Microsoft Excel. All right? We only started using these ERPs in technology world when the deals got complicated. when the deals became multi-geographical, multi-currency, multi-role, multilingual, multi-time zone. When those kind of dynamics started playing in those deals, the Excel said, boss, enough is enough.
Sure.
You go and use a better software, which is an ERP, right? So if you look at how do you apply the technology to an education world, people are just focusing on one space of education.
Sure.
If you look at the entire spectrum of education, education primarily, according to me, can be categorized into 3 to 4 broad areas. One is the admission. You can call it a customer relationship management or a lead generation, the customer conversion and whatnot. But that is precisely an admission area of our university system. Then there is, once you get that customer converted to a student, you have the teaching learning process. That's a bigger portion of the university system. Then you have an assessment or an examination system to be addressed. And then more of these technology companies forget that there is the entire alumni management that needs to be strengthened from the technology standpoint of view. Because in the Western world, the technologies have not been built by the government funding or by the funding by the, the owner. It has always been done by the philanthropic activities of their alumni. So the alumni engagement, alumni management, all those things have to be addressed from the technology standpoint. And then there's a lot of talk about the research and citations and all that stuff. So research is something that cuts across the line. So if you look at the 4 big buckets of education system, the admission process, the teaching learning, the examination or assessment or the research, the technology players need to understand. They can't just, eat one pie of the cake and then can enjoy it lifelong. They need to make sure that they are able to provide the services across the board.
Absolutely.
I have spoken to a lot of technology people. They're saying, we do a customer lead and the generation, and we are best at that. Obviously, you're best at that. But then what happens to my student who comes in?
Absolutely.
Then the MOOCs model comes in. We are doing this MOOCs and we are giving you the anytime, any learning kind of a model. Well, the problem is that you still need to cater to UP. UP is UP board, hardcore UP board. You can't have a SWAYAM launched in all the kind of fancy languages and forget about Hindi medium people. Unless until you deliver the content in the local language, technology is not going to solve the teaching learning process. Similarly, examination. So as I said, the technology needs to be applied to the context of education based on the functions. Most of these technology people, because they have just come up on the scene after 2005 or something, so they still need to look at the holistic picture of education before we actually apply the technology to the education.
Sure, absolutely. Very, very well said, actually, that complete context of education. So my last question here, so if both of you, could actually share your thoughts on the digital literacy program, and is it moving in the right direction? What can be done, and what are, the roads ahead?
Well, I think I've spoken enough, so I'll probably let ma'am to speak on that.
I will extend a little bit on what sir was saying. See, student learning behavior. So in 1880, Hermann Ebbinghaus, he has done research on forgetting curve. So whatever, like we are learning today. So he says within 1 hour, you forget 50% of it. Within 24 hours, you forget 70%. And within 1 month, you forget 90% of it. So that's his research. And if you think of how students learn, so there is this, how a baby learns, we see is the baby observes, sees, interacts with the environment, and then learns. That's audio, visual, kinesthetics, like playing around, interacting. So all those are modes of learning. And if you see, almost 40% of people are visual learners. And same amount, 40% are kinesthetics learners, means those who would like to interact, play around and learn. Now if you study all these learning methods, so now the new term which has come is immersive learning. So in the morning, Ms. Margaret, she had mentioned about immersive learning. So immersive learning says it's a combination of kinesthetics, audio, auditory, visual, and it can catch the attention of students. It can be, it will help students to play around. It will help students learning by doing. And what we in short do is project-based learning. So if you do project-based learning, problem-based learning, give the project to students. I'll just share one example from my institute. Recently, our institute, just to inform you, it's in a rural area. It's in a small town. But our students launched a helium balloon satellite which went up to 31 kilometers height.
Wow.
And ours is the third institute to do it.
Wow.
First is IIT Kharagpur, students, they did it. Second was BITS Goa, and third is ours. The first two institutes, they took help of Stanford and all. But our students could do it because what I feel in a small place like Islampur, because of technology. See, when they started working on the project, when they decided we want to launch a satellite, and they have launched the satellite with a purpose to collect air sample from the stratosphere. They have used the LoRa technology, which is first time used for communication of satellite. They have tracked the satellite right from the launch to the landing, and they could recover the whole satellite along with the air sample. So this small town students could do it because technology was available, because there was web-based intelligence, because they could interact with ISRO scientists, they could get email IDs, they could send emails, and I had seen them myself launching right from morning 6. They were building up the satellite. One team was working on helium balloon, another was working on parachute, because parachute was attached to it. So the teamwork, what you said, so the teamwork comes when you give them a task to do. They will know how to interact with each other, how to take care of the weaknesses of each other, how to learn from the net. So all that comes in if technology is available and this human intelligence, soft skills, all these are combined together, we get the best results.
Sure.
Just a 2-minute probably, if you allow me.
Yes, absolutely.
Just to extend that one. Surprisingly, technology, we thought technology adoption would be much higher in the next generation kids or whatever. But if you look at what technology has brought into the game, is the attention space of youth, the young generation, has been diminished like anything. I mean, if I get a WhatsApp video, I cannot even go beyond, say, 5 seconds or 10 seconds, right? Whereas, surprisingly enough, the attention span, due to technology, of the older generation has gone up. If you send them a mushaira on a WhatsApp, they will completely watch that video, right? So I mean, the technology has brought up significant change in the mindset. We thought that the attention span of the younger generation would be more. Sure. It has reduced, whereas the attention span of the older generation has increased because of the time, the lifestyle that they undergo today. Having said that, the core concept of education still remains unaddressed, which was the basic thing right from the older generation. Sure. And Professor Premvrat is here, and he's like guru to me, and there are a lot of other people. Obviously, इन लोगों की जनरेशन में एक ही चीज़ बेसिक थी, पढ़ाता कौन अच्छा था, जो पढ़ता अच्छा था,
sure.
बोलता कौन अच्छा था, जो सुनता अच्छा था.
बिल्कुल, हाँ जी.
तो आज भी बेसिक वही है, खूब अच्छा सुनिए, खूब अच्छा बोलिए, खूब अच्छा पढ़िए, खूब अच्छा पढ़ाइए, खूब अच्छा लिखिए. Technology will take care of its own, segment. It's just the tool, right? If I want to write, I need to first know how to write good.
Absolutely.
I can use technology, iPad and all to write, deliver that content. I can use the, video capture or the Facebook Live to speak good, but first I need to understand how to speak good, right? So thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. That was actually a very insightful, perspective from both of you. So we have seen some pros and some cons, some positives and some negatives. So, of course, this is a discussion which can go on, but due to paucity of time, so we'll have to actually cut it short. So, thank you very much once again for your time.